Welcome back to On Right Podcast. You have Elijah alongside Grant. We're going to get into this weekend's set of games. We'll start off from Michigan here, still riding high off our victory over Ohio. Got the Big Ten Championship approaching on Saturday in Indianapolis versus Purdue. Team that I'm not overly familiar with this year. I'm not even going to lie about that. I do not believe I even caught one of their games, but I did, like you kind of did, a crash course over the last 12 hours here or so. But kind of want to throw it over to you. What do you expect? From the squad this week. Coming off probably one of the, definitely the best program victory in recent years.
Yeah, yeah. No, I'm pretty much the same boat as you. I'd say probably the most I've watched of Purdue the last couple of years is probably their bowl game against Tennessee last year. It's like, 'cause it was just a crazy, ridiculous shootout. I think the final score was like 52-49, something crazy. Watched them play Penn State first game of the year. They played them tough. They just ended up losing like a last second touchdown. I think like under a minute left. But from then on, man, it gets like very, very confused. Like I don't know, it looks like one of your Big Ten West type schedules, right? Like lose Northwestern, the worst team in the conference, lose to Iowa, only scored 3 against Iowa when Iowa could, we saw how their offense looks. But then you see that, you see as well that they beat a Minnesota team that was solid to start the year off. I think a lot of people were thinking they might be the favorite spot of the West. They played, some teams tough. We saw how good Maryland is. Saw how good Illinois is. They managed to, sneak out a victory against them, beat the rival last week in Indiana. Um, yeah, I think overall, what I know about them is Aiden O'Connell, solid quarterback. I think it was a walk on back in 2019. Um, they pass the ball quite a bit. I think that's kind of like their spread offense. I think he averages right around 290 to 300 yards a game. They got a solid run game. I saw that their whole D line was honorable mention, Big Ten, or a good amount of them are. That's probably pretty much the extent of what I know overall. I think the receiver, Charlie Jones, that's the main guy. I think he, in fact, transferred from Iowa, which makes sense. But yeah, I think he's the main guy for him. So that's about all I know in a nutshell. Um, it's one of those teams. Obviously, anybody can get you anytime. I think this would be just another test to just things we can clean up on defense, things we can do to get better on offense, and but I know the team overall be ready to take them very seriously, and this is not going to be a trap game or anything by any means, but from us.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I anticipate much of the same from us. Obviously, the Big Ten West it is what it is. A little shaky. One of the teams, a lot of these guys kind of backed in. It was so it's one of those things where it is what it is. But obviously, like you said, any team can come out and get you. Obviously, they don't anticipate coming out and rolling over and just getting boot stomped. They would love to play spoiled to some degree.
Yep.
And a few things working in their benefit, like you said. That's what I've noticed from like the little highlight reel, or from what I watched from this season, is they do like to pass the ball around a decent amount. We're in the dome, but we've had the spotlight the last couple of weeks, leading up to the Ohio game, all pressure on us. We've had this spotlight several times this year where,
Yeah.
ESPN said we were in a trap game. Fox Sports or Big Ten, whatever the hell. Yeah,
Big Noon.
Big Noon. It says right there. Yeah, Big Noon. We're just talking about how Iowa could get us, or Penn State could get us, or Michigan State could get us, or I feel like it was the ongoing joke was they were traveling around with us, throughout the year. But
Yeah.
so I say all that to say, just looking at their schedule here, what it looks like is they're obviously seem to play fairly well in close games. A lot of these games they seem to be squeaking out by a few points here or there. So that's usually a sign of something, as you indicated, kind of in pre-production, but it's usually a sign of a well-coached team. If you're just finding ways to pull out the squeaker games week in and week out, and so they have a decent amount of those. And so we know how tough Maryland played us. We know that Tua can throw it all the way around, all over the field. They have a pretty explosive offense. Scores kind of mimic each other, obviously, from where we were. We were both in, the low 30s, upper 20s as well in our game. And that was one of our, more sloppy games. We're still trying to figure things out. That was a game that you and I happened to be at. So that's the game that I kind of really reeled in on just to kind of see what they look like versus them. And, I would say I wasn't overly impressed. So I think it's another one of those games where if we go out and do what we have to do, and that is, obviously take care of the football, dominate both line of scrimmage. I think we'll come out. We have a few players riding high. I can't imagine there's a guy walking around. I'm saying this half jokingly with a bigger head than Donovan Edwards right now. So he's probably, ready to give it a go. That hand to be another week healed. Whether he needs it or not, we'll see. He was able to get it done with like 7 fingers last week. So, I just think he's probably riding high. JJ's riding high. So I think we're going to take that momentum into the college football playoff. Obviously we're not going to jump out with the score predictions yet, but I kind of anticipate this game to be, more in the route direction. I think we're going to take care of business, try to come out and impress, we showed a few of those wrinkles of what else we can do. And, I think if you're a team trying to prepare for us right now, I don't really know what you're trying to key in on. And I think that's kind of an intimidating place to be where everybody would say stop the run. And then JJ came out and slinged it versus a team that nobody thought he could on the road. We don't have our starting running back. Backup rushes for a career day. So one of those things where I don't know if you're trying to, put a game plan up against us, what exactly you key in on, what you focus on, what you try to force the issue with. So, I'm going big blue all the way. I'm riding high into that college football playoffs.
Yeah. Oh, I'm right there with you. You hit it right on the head. We've definitely done a great job of just having a next man up mentality. It'll be interesting to see who even comes back, for this next game. I'm anticipating that. I mean, I don't even want Blake to even try to suit up. I think at this point it's just, sit it down and, try to do what he can to just get healthy, for the playoff. Yeah, I feel like, I think what will kind of happen is it'll be interesting to see how things unfold because I feel like, we've been getting a lot of teams' best punch in the first half or first quarter. We had a lot of, we had some turbulence here and there earlier in the season. And, I would be interested to see how they kind of respond. I'm sure they've been celebrating this win. It's Wednesday, and they're still talking about it. Like I've been watching some of the interviews and such. Just with the coaching staff and some of the players. There's still some off the win from Ohio. JJ did say that they're not going. They're definitely taking Purdue seriously, but I am kind of with you on that. I mean, I do feel like they might come out and get 3, first 10, 12 plays scripted, just come out and kind of just really be firing out. But I'm still more, I just want to continue to see the defense just continue to be more and more and more stout, just continue to dominate more and more because I just feel like I do think that's a big part of our identity. We're able to kind of use them as a crutch quite a bit, throughout the season. So that's something I just want to continue to see on our side of things. Let us see, us get a turnover and turn it into a touchdown, things along those lines. But I do think we might kind of come in and sleep off a little bit, but I do feel like we'll route them overall too.
Yeah, no, I agree. And just looking at the layout of the land as far as the college football playoffs goes, we weren't given that number 1 spot. That goes to Georgia, followed by us, TCU, USC, I believe. And then right outside is Ohio State and Alabama.
Yep.
So, it's kind of looking at the lay of the land. Obviously you win, you're in. A lot of people say, knock on wood, we don't even need a victory to stay, to keep in. But, obviously you want to go, you never want to take a shot with any of this committee and all that good stuff. So,
right.
You go out, you get a victory by any means necessary, and take care of business there. But, I think with a convincing victory and maybe a lucky situation out of a different, college or whatever SEC championship game or whatever other game could potentially have a different upset. We could be looking at, a little bit of trickeration and movement in there, but, I think Georgia's playing LSU, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yep.
And, so I'm going to be a half-hearted LSU fan this weekend, rooting for them just to kind of make a little bit of chaos. and just to see what noise we can make. But ultimately, I think we can beat any of those teams in the back half, assuming that TCU and USC take care of business.
Yeah,
I just look, it's a Big Ten bias, but you mentioned before we hopped on, but it's a Big Ten bias, but I think we can move them around, kind of manhandle them. Both of those type of conferences aren't exactly built from the same cloth. So
100%. Yeah, no, I think both of them teams they're probably more building the mold of in Ohio.
mm-hmm.
To where great quarterback, throwing all over the yard. Solid run game. But no, I mean I'm right there with you. I think this is going to be interesting because you got a couple different scenarios in play. So like if USC and TCU went out, that's pretty much chalk it up to whoever's in the playoff right now. That's what it's going to be. But you also have a scenario where like USC loses and TCU wins. I do think that TCU gets moved. TCU will stay put. I do think that's where Ohio may sneak in. It was also been interesting too. A lot of people making an argument that they think going forward, like the conference championship shouldn't play a factor in whether playoff positioning. Just for the main reason that you got teams sitting at home banking on somebody like Ohio fans or Utah fans right now just because that's probably their ticket to get in. And yeah, I mean I feel like that scenario to play TCU drops it drops one, you have to probably move up USC and then have Ohio sneak in there. So
Yeah,
we're looking at some chaos for sure, like
yeah, no,
potential
and
chaos.
assuming, let's just say that does happen, and assuming we go out and win, I think we would by far have the best win. If we have a win versus a team that's in the college football playoffs, and I just think that would give us the momentum to probably deserve a one spot, which would get us a rematch, which would be absolutely insane. That our
Yeah,
reward would be to go and play a team that we've already played, 2 weeks prior to that. That's why I kind of think that'd be setting a crazy precedent. But I do think the committee kind of set us up for that by leaving them right there.
oh yeah,
I think the committee showed. I don't think PCU was in that first college football ranking, even though they were like 10-0 or 9-0, whatever it would have been at that moment. And I think that showed that the lack of respect they give for that conference in general.
right.
And so you're absolutely correct. I think a loss with them boots them out.
Yep.
And I tend to believe that with USC as well. That
They had 2 losses.
yeah. So yeah, no, I agree. So it could get interesting, and the USC Utah game was one of the best games I watched all college football season this year. I think that was the game that Utah had the passed away players on the helmets.
Yeah.
Went for two when everybody, was at a household full of people and everybody thought that, they were going to go ahead and send it to OT. And, they dropped them and went ahead and went for two. So I just think that's kind of, in general, I think they have a handful versus them again. So,
Yep.
in general, I'm looking some good football coming up this weekend. I'm riding high with Michigan. We're the momentum that we have is going to be a hard force to stop.
Yeah, I think we got house money right now, and like what's working in our favor. I mean, we beating the hell out of people with 7, 8 starters out. So like, you get this month off, 3 weeks off, whatever that looks like. I mean, we can, potentially be looking to get back to completely full strength. And yeah, I mean, I would take us. I mean, I think we would. I'd love to see us get, USC or TCU. I think we would be able to, push them around quite a bit. To say that with all due respect, I do just, that's how I feel. And I do think, now we're almost like JJ now makes it where we're like looking George like in the face. Like last year, we were kind of like looking up to him, bright eyed, first time there. Now I think we are, getting really that level playing field with them. I feel like, you know, confidence is sky high. Like I said, we're coming off that big victory last week. Looking to see them just take care of business this week. Yeah, I mean, this is exciting because it's one of those situations where we kept talking about all year how we weren't getting their proper respect. We were being compared with our arch rival literally the entire season, and we sat here all we do was talk about just gotta keep winning. just went out. Like we've been playing, like we said, we've been in the playoffs since Illinois. Like that's always been our whole mindset. So I think from here on out, I mean, whoever it may be, I'm like you. I'll take us over pretty much whoever will be potentially in that top four come Sunday.
Yeah, no, for sure. So I look forward to it. A night game, and for all the marbles, back to back Big Ten championship, it'll be fantastic to see.
Yeah,
Major turnaround for
already got
one.
the shirt in the cart.
Yeah, back to back. Yeah, no, 100%. We get into
Yeah,
the Lions, or you wanna
what you say?
we get into the Lions?
Yeah, we can do. We just score prediction first.
Yeah, all facts.
So I think, yeah, I'm gonna go. Like I said earlier, I feel like they'll come out super inspired. Probably have good majority of the fans. Purdue will, but I do think we'll. I'm looking at like a 34 to 10, 31-10. I think we'll sputter a little bit just because. I mean, that win was huge. You know what I'm saying? So I just feel like that's something that may happen. But I do feel like we'll do what we've been doing all year, going to halftime, maybe up a touchdown or two, and then just complete domination second half.
Yeah, no, okay, no, I think right in the same similar ballpark to you. I'm gonna go a little 42-21. Like you said, maybe they'll potentially move the ball a little bit, but it'd be one of those things where ultimately, we have the game in hand, majority of the game, and kind of, putting it on them near the end. Uh,
Yep.
that's kind of what I'm looking forward to. Yeah, no, 100%.
Okay. Yeah, we'll go ahead and make the unfortunate transition to talk a little bit about the Detroit Lions. I know we will talk briefly about just kind of another Dan Campbell blunder last week. You called it. You know, we both sat here and said, if they get blown out, it's gonna be unfortunate, and that'll kind of like bring us back down to earth after that 3-game winning streak and had the whole state of Michigan on a high. But yeah, I mean it came down to we were down 3 with the ball over the over midfield. Didn't even try to score a touchdown to win the game. We threw one, gone through one bad fade route, trying to win the game. And I also have heard that the tight end and St. Brown was open on that same play.
Yeah,
So,
I've been hearing that too.
yeah. So, yeah, I know that's pretty much it in a nutshell as far as that game. Campbell's continuing to just kind of start almost getting away of success here and there. I mean, this is probably his 3rd game he's dropped. 3rd or 4th game this year, just off of like him alone, his decision making. Now I got the Jaguars coming in the Ford Field. They just had a big dub over Lamar Jackson and them. 14-point comeback. So, they're riding high. What are your thoughts on this Sunday? What that game looks like?
Yeah, no. So obviously this is a game that we can go out and win. Obviously depending on which team shows up, but I think in general, people weren't as hard on them on this loss as people are still making those excuses.
Right.
Not pointing out the coaching blenders.
Mm-hmm.
How this is a Super Bowl type caliber team. And we were hanging with them, and so it's kind of more of that type of stuff where more moral victories. But in general, I do think we can go out and we can get Jacksonville. It's they're very beatable. Young quarterback. Our defense is obviously still
Figuring things out.
They've seemed to turn the page. They seem to turn the page, and at least they're putting out a formidable defense. A defense that's
Right.
not getting a track meet on up and down. So,
Torched. Yeah.
yeah, no. So I mean, 100%. I think they can go out and get this game.
Mm-hmm.
This is a winnable game. This is a game that jump back to August. I would have gave them. Before anything played out. So, in general, is I don't think Williams come back this week, but they kind of flirting with that a little bit. Obviously, we got the young guys in. Is defense across the board. I'm saying the young guys as far as Hutch and Kirby Joseph, and so I mean it's going to be exciting to still see them guys grow and develop, and that's kind of what I'm looking for when I watch this team. It's kind of similar when it's distance. It's a grow and development type season.
Yeah, it is. I think the tough thing about this, this last game, we obviously not going to dwell on it because it is what it is at this point. Tough thing is though, is like, You know, Thursday, Thanksgiving game, probably best game, one of the best games of the year in the NFL. Found a way to still lose it. On the flip side, you had, Jacksonville, probably one of the best games of the weekend, down 14, came back, scored, went for two to win the game. And then you just got one team, on a low, one team coming in on a high. So it's, my thing with the Lions is like, you hope that they'll be able to, just kind of turn the page, get back up, make some adjustments. And I agree with you, though. I think this is a game they should definitely be able to get. Um, I think this will be one that this should be like I won't say dominating by any means at all. I do think this is one they should just kind of come in and impose their will and just really like you gotta make up for last week, and that was a game that you could have stole. That would have been huge playoff implications. Like they don't even realize when ESPN be putting the playoff little picture on there, they got the Lions. They in the hunt.
Yeah.
Like so, it's I don't know, man. I mean, I feel like we know what's gonna happen. I think we're still gonna be in that 6-7 win range, but like how things are unfolding, I mean, they're still kind of in it until they end up losing probably that ninth game. So got to imagine that they're doing what they can to just forget about last week and come out and try to steal a dub from Jacksonville.
Yeah, no, I think last week was, and like you said, we're not going to go into it, but last week was a very pivotal point because I think they would have got me. I would have put one foot kind of on that bandwagon. With the whole program. Obviously I'm riding high with rooting for them, probably a lifer with them, but they would have got me on one foot on the bandwagon with the whole program as far as maybe this coach, maybe everything. But I knew better than that, even with the 3-game win streak, because you always revert back to what you are, and
Yeah,
he's a guy who probably is just in too deep. He's not a head coach, and head coaches know not to make boneheaded decisions like that. And like you just spoke on a couple of minutes ago, with the last possession, our last offensive possession. Um, you know, there's the argument of running the ball there, force them to call another timeout. There's another, there's a whole bunch of, there's a whole different scenarios that you can play out there. And I think you have to have the intellect to be able to process all of that in 10 seconds.
yeah,
And I just don't know. So
right,
I question all that. You're going to revert back to what you are. And he is a guy who, is more rah-rah than X's and O's. And, that just doesn't work week in, week out in NFL.
right.
When you add in him not clock managing the clock right, um, you know, it's a rough out there. But
Yeah, it's a lot. Yeah, it's just a lot there. I mean, I
another
made a
home
joke
game.
like,
I'm looking at this another home game. I feel like every home we've had every.
yeah, but they got a couple left for the season too.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I made a joke just saying like Campbell, he holding the timeouts like they on lay, like he can keep them on layaway or something. Like you can't start the next game with 5 timeouts, bro.
Yeah, he gonna
Like you hit
roll
it on the
over. He
head.
gonna
I think
roll
that's
over the
the
next game like PTO. Roll
right.
over.
I think roll over. I think the biggest thing you just hit on the head is like, yeah, you run that ball on 31. They got it. They want an opportunity to try to win the game too. But like there was that scenario. A lot of things kind of came into play. It was kind of disappointing to watch it unfold like that. But like I said, it is what it is. I think if I were to give a score prediction for this game, I'm going to just go ahead and go. Um, I do 27-24 Detroit. I think they just sneak one out. They come out super inspired and just scrape one out.
Yeah. Um. Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I was gonna give him a dub too on this one just to be nice. Um.
Shits and giggles.
Yeah. Maybe throw it in the atmosphere. No. I think probably right around the same ballpark as you. I'm gonna go. Let's make it something crazy. Let's go 30-29 Detroit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we'll.
Fourth will be rocking.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, I feel like we're just more pessimistic than anything because what we've been seeing. But I think like the general public that just loves our WWE, our superstar for a head coach.
Yeah.
Like, they'll have Ford Field rocking. They'll
Yeah, I
definitely
also
make
seen
fun.
something. Just one last point. I seen something that says Dan Campbell coaches better on the road because
Coach, coach
he's
better on the road, really.
yeah, because the crowd's like not amping him up, and he's not like he's not. It's kind of I don't know if there's any truth to this at all, but we do have more wins on the road, I think. So
He turned around in
yeah,
home games like, you want me to go for it? I will go for it. Go for it. Like, yes, no. Right. They throw him two Bud Lights. He's just in there, just
one shot
Stone
goes.
Cold Steve Austin just
Two
comes out of
shots goes.
nowhere. Like,
Yeah, that's yeah. He probably wants
yeah,
to do that. That's the funny part. But no, bro. No, we'll be back at you Sunday with a little recap with with a Big Ten championship in hand and hopefully a Lions victory. So yeah, that's all I got.
go blue.
Hopefully.